Welcome to another edition of Sound Advice. And in this edition of Sound Advice, what I want to talk about is balance to unbalanced cables. Okay? And not getting very scientific about it, but having an understanding so that when it's time for you to purchase balanced cables or unbalanced cables, you'll know exactly what you need to purchase. And you'll know what a unbalanced cable is, and you also know what an unbalanced cable is. So let's, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into what what is it all about of unbalanced to balanced cables. All right. All right, let's get to it. First, I'm going to show you some examples of some unbalanced cables. And the first unbalanced cable would be a ST, or a tip sleeve unbalanced cable. And what this cable is used for is mostly for like hooking up a guitar or another type of instrument, say like pianos, you're hooking up your keyboard or something like that. And that's what this looks like. You probably already know. Okay, that's what that looks like. Okay, and then the other that you might find in a home studio, yeah, and these are like what you would see normally in a home studio. Okay, and that's an RCA. All right, and this is an example of the RCA. Okay, and this is another unbalanced cable. And mostly, I don't use RCA in my studio, but say if you had a CD player or something like that that you could hook up, and then you could hook, and if your monitor say had an RCA hook up in the back of it, you could hook this up and get a signal that you could listen to the CD player out of your monitors. But these are pretty much almost obsolete, but they do have use, not necessarily for the studio, but in home audio systems. These are mostly used, but they are unbalanced as well. Okay, so now that you have an example of what the TS is and what an RCA is, which you probably already know, let's start talking about the inside workings of why this is made an unbalanced cable. Okay? Alright, now let's talk about the inner working parts, and I got my notes here so that I won't leave anything out with the unbalanced cable. And first thing in the construction of an unbalanced cable, what you have is a signal that carries a wire, that signal that carries the sound to your speakers or to the source, and then you have a ground. Okay, so it has two wires inside. One is for the signal that's going to be going back and forward per se, and the other one is the ground wire. Now, the ground wire is what protects the antenna, or because the signal can carry like it's like an antenna, and it can pick up other frequencies like RF frequencies, which are radio frequencies. They can pick that up. Well, with the ground, it protects from that. But what you have is, as long as it's not too long in length, you can keep those. It can shield pretty good. But if you start looking at trying to get 10 feet, 20 feet of an unbalanced cable, what you'll find is you'll start introducing some RF frequencies. So if you keep it short, say 3 feet to 6 feet, then the ground cable can do a better job of protecting from radio frequencies, where you just keep a good signal of the sound that you want to hear. So to give an example of that would be, I remember listening to the radio, or I mean not the radio but the stereo, to my dad's stereo, and every time my mom would be baking a cake and she would use her mixer, you could hear the mixer coming out of the speakers. Okay, and that's an example of another frequency. Even though it's not, yeah, it's not an AM station or nothing, but it's still a frequency that's coming in, that's getting introduced to, that's causing noise, which is the mixer that's causing a noise coming through the speaker while she's baking the cake. So either she would have to stop mixing her, mixing her ingredients, or she would, or I would have to turn the stereo off until she was done, which most likely it was when she was done. So that is how, in the old days, how that would happen. So they started making these cords better, and so you do have an unbalanced cable, but it's just saying that as long as it's short, like 3 feet to 6 feet, it'll protect from radio frequencies. But if it gets to be like 20 feet, 30 feet, well, now you're going to start introducing some interference, and that's why you really won't see these type of cables used in the studio, per se, as far as hooking up like a compressor or EQ to it. So just remember that it's just two wires inside. One is a ground, and one is the signal that carries the signal, which is like and it can be like an antenna that can pick up waves if the cord is long in length. Okay, so hopefully that breaks down and give you an understanding of about an unbalanced cable. Okay, and like I said before, it's mostly used for instruments like your guitars or keyboard and etc., for any kind of instruments that that needs to be hooked up, and that's what you would use an unbalanced cable for. And the reason why is because the guitar, the plug that you plug it into on the guitar, it's not equipped to be able to handle a balanced cable. It's only able to handle an unbalanced cable. So that's the reason why, like especially like for a guitar, why you would use an unbalanced cable, is for that particular reason, because the guitar is not equipped to handle a balanced cable, and we're going to get into that next. All right, now let's look at some balanced cables, and the first set of cables is your XLR cables. Okay, this is your male end and your female end. Okay, and these cables have three prongs on them. So with that being said, these balance cables are more complex. Now this is what you will commonly find in your studio, and this is what I use in my studio, which you probably use as well. The other one is the TRS, which is the tip ring sleeve. Now on the TS that we looked at, it only had a tip and a sleeve. Okay, but on a TRS, it has a tip ring sleeve. So this is what we would use, like this is for my headphones, and so this is what I would use to plug into my so I can hear sound from my headphones, so I can get a stereo sound coming from my headphones. Okay, so when you hooking up speakers, if you use, because I know monitors sometimes they'll have where you can use a XLR cable or a TRS cable, and then you got your options, and you want it to be stereo so that you get the stereo sound. So that's why you say, when you go look for one, I need a TRS cable, and and that's what this is. But these cables, a balance cable of these kinds, are more for long distance. Okay, so now let's talk about the inner workings of why balance cables are able to run long distance. Okay, let's talk about that. Okay, got my notes again. If I forget anything, I got my notes to help me out, to help me explain. But with a balanced cable, what we have is you have two signals and you have a ground. Okay, and what that means is you have the copy of the same signal that runs across the two signals. Okay, but what happens is one gets flipped 80 degrees, which cancels, so it turns to zero. So it gets flipped to 80 degrees, so the wavelengths aren't the same, they're different, and so they cancel out. And so as the signal travels, and then you have the ground, well, it's blocking the radio frequencies. So you have two shields that are actually blocking radio frequencies. So then once it hits its destination, then it gets flipped back to now it's not canceled anymore. You can hear the sound, okay, going whenever it hits its destination. And that's the reason why you're able to run longer cable, as you know, like say 50 feet or 100-foot cable, um, that you can run that, and you'll keep a clean signal. You know, you won't get interference from an AM station, as we used before, in introducing into that signal. It'll keep it away. So where you would find these at, that's why, well, you know where to find them at, but the reason that's why we use them in the studio, because we have a lot of sensitive equipment, right? And with that sensitive equipment, it can, it gets, stuff can get introduced. So that's why you want to use balanced cables, okay? And say even for live sound. So if the stage is 100 feet away from the sound desk, which normally it is, or I'm just throwing out 100 feet, but it's in a distance where you want to use balanced cables to be able to make that length, and you have the three cables, which two carrying the signal, one gets flipped, and then you have the ground. So you got a good isolation that radio frequencies can't be entered, and then once it hits its destination, then it flips back into phase to come to go into its destination wherever that signal is going. So that is the main reason why you would want to use balanced cables. It's because you're running, a little distance from something, or you're trying to keep the signal quiet. So that's the main reasons why you want to use a balanced cable. Now, like I said before, the guitar is not equipped to handle a balanced cable. So that's why they still use an unbalanced cable. Okay, and okay, and I mentioned all those things, but so hopefully this gives you a better understanding, instead of, oh, I just need, you go to Guitar Center, or you trying to talk with a sales engineer on Sweetwater, and you just tell them, you may, I think I need, or something like that. Well, now hopefully now why you would need a balanced cable, and so now you can make a better purchase of what you need. Because I've even had times earlier on in my career as a mixer where I've bought the wrong cable, and so I bought that cable. Well, Sweetwater's not taking it back, and well, I'm sorry, they did take it back, and then I was able to get the other cable. But you see, that's more time spent because I didn't know. So that's why I'm just sharing this information with you. I'm not trying to say which one is better or whatever. It's nothing of that. It's the use of them, and making a sound decision on what you need to use off of the information that has just been given to you. So let's go ahead and close it out. I hope you learned something, and we're just going to keep coming with videos to help to enlighten, so that you can become that better engineer. All right, well, I hope this was a video that was informative. If you were kind of wondering about balance, unbalance, which one do I need to use? Hopefully this video have cleared up some things without like going into a bunch of science behind it, but just going briefly give you a basic understanding so that it'll help you in the future when you do need to buy some cables. Now, there are other range of cables out there, don't get me wrong, there are other range, but I just wanted to focus on what we normally use in our home studio. And those cables that I showed examples of are pretty much the cables that we do use in our home studio. So I hope that everything was explained good and we get a better understanding of everything. Don't forget to check out my website called Sound Advice for you with the letter u.com. Go check out my website. Please follow me on Instagram and everything like that. And we're just going to keep it rolling, keep giving you information. Like I said, this is for us to be able to get better at what we do. So once again, I'm Jeff McKenzie. This has been Sound Advice, and I will see you on the next one.